In 1963, a man named Ernesto Miranda was arrested and questioned without the full knowledge of his rights. He was arrested under the suspicion of robbery, kidnapping, and rape. Before he was interrogated by the police, he was not informed of his rights as a citizen and being prosecuted. While in questioning, the police illegally obtained a written confession from Miranda, who did not have an attorney present. At the trial, the only evidence that was used was the illegally obtained confession. In my opinion, the Miranda rights should have been a law made before. It is the responsibility of the government to let us know our rights as a citizen, and the responsibility of the police to enforce it. It was a Saturday night on the 2nd of March, 1963. A young woman, whose name remains protected, about the age of 18, was on her way home from the bus stop when she was grabbed and shoved into a man's car. She was kidnapped and raped, and the police was later notified. The man suspected was Ernesto Miranda. Miranda was an indigent immigrant from Mexico living in Phoenix, Arizona. He was arrested for suspicion, and there was no other evidence that connected him to the crime. But he already had a criminal record, so he was prone to being brought in for a lineup. The police asked him to come in for some questions, and he was put into a short lineup. It did not take long for the victim to pick him, but it was not a sure choice. He was a perfect suspect for the case. The victim identified him as the suspect after seeing him in the lineup. Miranda was charged with kidnapping, rape, and robbery. After the victim identified Miranda as the suspect, he was taken into police custody and interrogated. During the questioning, Miranda was never informed of his rights as a citizen. Since he was unaware of his rights, he did not know that he was able to have an attorney present or that he had the right to remain silent during the questioning. The interrogation lasted about 2 hours, and when it was finished, the police obtained a written confession from Miranda stating that he had committed this crime and that he was aware of his right against self-incrimination. Without further questioning, Miranda was sent to trial.
Number 759, Ernest Miranda, Petitioner versus Arizona.
June 1963, Miranda was sent to trial. They questioned the victim in court, and she confidently pointed him out in court as the man that kidnapped and raped her. Detective Cooley, the detective who interrogated Miranda, admitted that he did not explain to Miranda that he was allowed to have an attorney present during the interrogation. But the police argued that since Miranda had a previous record, he should have been familiar to police mechanisms. The judge sentenced him to 20 to 30 years in prison. The only evidence that was used was solely his confession and no other admissible evidence. After being convicted, Miranda obtained a lawyer, and he made an appeal to the court. His lawyer stated that since Miranda had been denied his rights from the moment he was taken into police custody, he should be awarded another trial. Therefore, his lawyer made a request to the Arizona Supreme Court, arguing that his client had been denied his rights in the interrogation. He asked that the confession be dismissed as evidence because Miranda was not aware of his right to have an attorney or any other rights that should have been made known. After the long and stretching trial, the Supreme Court came to their decision. The vote was 5-4, so it was not a unanimous decision. They decided that his conviction could not be based solely on a confession that was inadmissible because he was not aware of his rights. Now, this did not mean that Miranda was free. However, it did mean that he got another trial under the circumstance that the confession would not be used as evidence. The difference between this trial and the last was a new piece of evidence. Miranda's wife came forward as a witness to explain her visit to Miranda in jail. She testified stating that Miranda confessed to her that he indeed did kidnap and rape the victim. Her testimony had the jury convinced that Miranda was indeed the suspect, and Miranda stayed in jail for 20 to 30 years. After Miranda, the court made it a law for the police to carry around a card that stated the basic rights a suspect should know when being arrested. These rights included: you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have him present with you while you are being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any questioning, if you wish one.
What is the impact on law enforcement of the Miranda warnings? We've all seen Dragnet, we've all seen the TV shows where they read the warnings, but I can see where that argument against probably did have a lot of weight to it. And talk about the impact afterwards.
It did, certainly in the 50s and the 60s. It lost a lot of steam in the 70s, and by the 80s, this is the most widely accepted positive thing for police officers. If the police officer wants to get the confession that he's about to take in evidence, the best way to do that is to give the suspect his Miranda rights. Many of them, in large numbers, waive those rights for all kinds of reasons, but they waive those rights. Once that happens, if the warnings are properly given at the right time and the right circumstances, the confession becomes Miranda compliant.
Yes.
And that becomes a way to get that confession evidence. So police officers are now, by and large, very much in favor of this.
The Miranda case changed the police system completely. It was now the responsibility of the police to read the suspects their rights. This was a total adjustment to the police mechanisms and helped suspects become aware of their rights as a citizen when being arrested.